All right, friends who ramble, we are back for another episode. I talked about on the first edition of the new show. I wanted to do more of like every 2 weeks thing. I just feel like there's more to talk about here. So I do think that we're going to keep up the power rankings from last year. That's what we're doing on this one. I think we'll make that an every 2 weeks thing, and then the other episode I'll just talk about random stuff that I want to talk about, state of the league, some fantasy football stuff, anything that I have on my mind. But yeah, we wanted to mix it up. I wanted to bring in more people. That was my goal with the show. Bring in more people from the show, get different people mixed up, with me and then whoever else I want to have on. So Amaral, he reached out. He wanted to be on the first edition of the new power rankings this year. I think he wants to get out there. He wants to set the tone. And then I thought that it would be nice to have a guest like George. For those of you who don't know, because you probably don't see him in the chat at all, but he is one half of the brain trust of Team Two Pins. He is the 1.5 time champion. He puts a lot of weight into that half championship, I can tell you that. But George, we're happy to have you on. I think a lot of people were worried that we might never see you again. You were a former host of my old show, and then you left me on an island with Pete. We see how that turned out, but we're glad to have you here. You got any comments to start us off?
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Nice. Very, very nice. Yeah, I thought you'd be a good voice to have on here. You always have you seem to have something to say about every team, and you do have sort of that superiority complex going on because of your early championships, which I mean, I'll be honest, I think 20 years from now we will look back and that'll kind of be like the dead ball era. He's playing against plumbers, that type of stuff. So, we already talked about it, McMorrow's championship. I don't know why that two pinch championship doesn't get the same treatment. It was only a year later, but here we are. So I'm happy to have you on. I'm glad to have a voice like yours to talk about some of these teams and mix it up because I feel like you're not going to be so nice with some teams, and I think that we need that. But on the other side, we have Amaral here. Always a pleasure to have you on, Amaral. You got anything to say before we jump into things?
Not really. I'm ready to go. I've been thinking about these tiers for a week or so now. Um, I don't know, I don't know like how creative we're gonna get with the names.
I think we'll
Uh,
go. Yeah, I don't want. Yeah, like I was saying before the show, like I do want to try and do more of a 12 through one, maybe more from a redraft standpoint. And if you are rebuilding and you have a bunch of picks, we can give you like a nice comment, but we're still gonna, rank you at the bottom because, for example, McMorrow's team is gonna be locked in at 12. They have 50 less points than Simcoe, who has 90 less points than the next person. So, like, that's just a bad team. So, we're not going to give you a ton of credit just because you have a bunch of young guys that haven't proven anything or you have a bunch of picks that haven't turned into anything. So, I do think that we can kind of tier it like we did last year, but I do want to take more of a redraft approach. And if you're really good right now, then I think that you should be ranked pretty high. And like I was saying before the show too, I do want to try and just drop all preseason opinions. If you thought a team was really good heading into the season, they haven't been great so far. I don't want you to hold them up to that and say, oh well, I had them ranked first going into the season, so I can only bump them down so far. If they're like the seventh best team right now, they're the seventh best team. So before we hop into that, I guess we can actually take a look at how some of these teams are. I do have it made up for us. Hold on, let me do the screen share. All right, you guys see it? So here we go. Here is the playoff picture right now. Actually, let me just.
Hold on, something's wrong.
What's going on? What do you got to say, George?
No, something's wrong because you were saying we were playing against plumbers, right? But it looks that's weird. I don't know. That's weird. Maybe it is right. I guess we keep going, but it looks like something might be off.
No, that's true. You had some good weeks early on. I'll give that to you. But what was it like? Week three, you had 50 points from Kamara. You only ended up scoring like 90 or something like that. It was really impressive. I've never seen somebody score that large of a percentage of their team's weekly points. So I actually thought that was pretty cool. That's probably something historic. So you guys really do continue to just set the bar, everything like that. But as we all know, the playoff picture, the top three seeds, those are the three divisional winners. So they're not necessarily the three highest scoring teams, although we do say this is a points league. So inside of that tier of three, they are tiered by points for. So as I think George was starting to talk a little bit about, Two Pins is still at the top. They have the most points for. They have 509.64. Wallace is 3 points behind them there, and Joshy and the Zits 20 points behind, which I mean, at this point in the season, that's basically nothing. So three good teams, 3-1, 4-0 from two pins and Wallace. But right now, if you take a look at the Gabagool division, it's a pretty tightly contested race. I think they all just like split against each other, but they're all scoring a bunch of points. So you got Joshy and the Zits at 3. You got Slippery Pete and the Most Athletic Suns. They're the 4 and the 5 seed in the wild card. So 3 representatives there. OccasionalViber, they are 3-1, but they are the 6th seed because of points for. So they are at 443, and then just outside of that is the 4th Gabagool member, Josh Winsper and Go Tigers. So it's a pretty tight race. Beyond that, you got myself, the Slow Stroke Kings. You got Big Brain LLC. That number is something to keep an eye on as well, because if you check the league chat, the pin messages, Mitch and I, we have a bet. I believe it's like $48 plus inflation at the time of cashing the bet. Team to have the most points for. So after the first few weeks, I was actually starting to slip behind Big Brain a little bit, but my 130 whatever point week last week was able to actually vault me into the lead against them. So that's a number to keep an eye on moving forward. And then 10, 11, 12, we got Sfogliatella, who I actually shouldn't say 10, 11, 12, because Sfogliatella is still very much in it. They're only 9 points behind Big Brain, 17 behind me. And then, bringing up the rear is Lamar and the Shits, and then McMorrow's team. So that's how it's ranked right now. I should have done the math. I'm wondering who has like the best. I guess I could do it quick. I don't feel like doing Excel right now though. But the max points for as well. I'm actually just going to sort that from high to low. So it's still 2 pins. I love my mom, Joshy and the Zits, Slippery Pete, the Suns, the Vibers. That all stays the same. But you can see, I mean, I actually think the whole playoff picture stays the same, everything there, but you can see how things kind of change there and who's projected way more, everything like that. So I actually think I didn't attach those. So that's actually why that's fucked up. So ignore that. That's actually not accurate at all. Yeah, I just didn't have those attached to the names. That's my bad. I did a bad job with Excel there, but we'll make a better sortable version when I'm not doing it on the fly. Let's bring it over to the draft lottery. So as of right now, right, we're only going to go 12 through 7. That's just the projected playoff picture right now. That's not determined by max points for at all. That's strictly on when you lose and then who was the lower seed versus the higher seed. That's how that plays itself out. But in the draft lottery itself, that's where we get more of a picture of the max points for. The Slow Stroke Kings, that's me. I actually move up to the 6th seed. Big Brain LLC, Go Tigers, Sfogliatella, Lamar and the Shits, and McMorrow. But I do think it's worth noting that McMorrow does have 9 of the first round picks. So right now, the picks owned by McMorrow, it's his own pick, the Shits, Go Tigers, Big Brain LLC, the Slow Stroke Kings, OccasionalViber, the Most Athletic Suns, Joshy and the Zits, and 2 pits. Those are all the picks that he owns. So right now, that would give him 7 of the first 8 picks, and then 10 and 12 as well. But that is the current draft lottery picture right now. Of course, we do a lottery for the top 4, but McMorrow owns so many of those picks. I still think he's going to have, 6 or 7 of the top 8 or 9 picks. So, any reactions to any of these things? George, you were starting to chirp a little bit about where you're at. How about you give us a 2-pin State of the Union? You were kind of mellow when we did your introduction. Go ahead, talk your shit. You're at the top of the board right now. Tell us how you feel.
The standard is the standard. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of things happen. Seasons change, years go by, but some things are constant. And that's what they call universal truths. And so I think they say it's death, taxes, and 2 pins to dominate the league. And that's what we've always done, and that's what we're continuing to do. We still get chirped in the chat from time to time. You hear the birds chirping, and they'll text us. There's all types of controversy when we make a trade, and it makes sense. When you're at the top, everything that you do is kind of a little bit more magnified, and everybody pays attention to it a little bit more. And so, maybe if somebody else makes the same trade that we make, it's a non-starter. No one talks in the chat. It's dead. But let the pins be involved in it, and it's going to get people's attention. It's going to get people riled up. But that's why we're in the league. At this point, unfortunately, we're kind of becoming the Yankees, but we do what we have to do to keep engagement going. And as you can see, the standard is a standard. And kind of as long as we have Pat, I think we're going to be in a position to continue to dominate.
I do like that Yankee comparison because they were a team that got things done. They won most of their rings when polio was still killing people and before 9/11 and everything like that. And then since then, when we got into a more modern era, they consistently come up short. They lose way earlier than they should. They're more regular season heroes. So I do like that comparison, but I will say, I wouldn't really call it pushing back, but just in fairness on the trade comment, I do think a lot of people were actually on your side of the deal. I think everybody felt like you took advantage of Igor there. People were maybe tossing around theories that Igor is throwing in the towel and he's helping you win. Maybe you guys are splitting the pot or something like that. And, of course, Travis Kelce hasn't been playing up to his typical standard to start the season. He did kind of have a little bit of a breakout last week. So we'll see if he can start scoring some touchdowns, things like that. But I do want to get your comment on that trade because something that Igor said to kind of defend himself was it was the best offer we had. And I mean, to me personally, I hear that and I say, well, if that's the best offer, then you should just be holding on and seeing what better you can get because you can get better at some point. But really, it was between that trade for Corum, who was a third round pick, and then what, like a 2026 second round or something like that. Or he could have had Derrick Henry. And before the season, he was defending it and saying, what, an aging running back? What, no, we wanted to get younger, but it also seems like he's currently trying to compete. If you could put yourself in Igor's shoes, and I know you guys are good buddies, do you think maybe he'd go back and do it over again and he'd maybe take Derrick Henry and, try and be, halfway decent this year?
Yeah, it's a good point, and you see he's in the playoff picture, so Igor's always going to be in the mix. But um, I think the thing that he was trying to get across, and that we talked about, is that everybody once a trade is done has all the things that they were willing to offer, all the things that they were willing to do. They had this on the table, they had that on the table. But then when you go back and you look at the actual like negotiations, you see sometimes people say that they were going to accept a trade or they were going to do something, and you look at it and it wasn't as close as people are kind of making it out to seem once they don't actually have to pull the trigger on that trade. And so I know Wallace was in there and he was chirping a bit, but from my understanding, Derrick Henry was being talked about. It had not been agreed upon. It had been agreed upon on one side. Igor said send the trade. Trade didn't get sent. There was a lot of I need to think about it and wishing and washing. But like I said, once the trade gets completed, then you have people coming in there acting like, they were ready to pull the trigger. I know because I was texted when that trade got sent, and I was like, oh, we can't match that. And then I texted him like 3 days later and was like, is Travis Kelce still on your team? And he was like, yeah. And I said, all right, let's get something done. So that's one of those things I think you probably have experience, Kieran. People say all the time that they're willing to do something, but when you really look back on it, it's like, if I said send the trade, would you have really sent it? And so that's kind of, I think, where the Derrick Henry thing kind of landed.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I will say I'm usually on I wouldn't say the other side of it. I more deal with the people in this league who, you reach out, you say, hey, I'm interested in this player. Okay, we're here to, we'll listen to your offer. Okay, well, I'm willing to offer these guys. What do you like? Oh, well, we're not really looking to sell, but we'll listen to your offer. Okay, well, tell me what you like. Do you like these guys? No. That's usually what I end up dealing with. It's a bunch of people that's like talking to a brick wall sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of characters when it comes to different people. We have like the flirts. I think maybe Pete and Bowen are guys that like to flirt a little bit and they like to throw things out there, but sometimes it's not always that serious. And then you got some guys that, like I said, it's like talking to a brick wall. And then, yeah, you got other guys like that too, who are kind of just there to say no or shoot things down. So, all right, moving on. Amaral. I feel like I was actually disrespecting your team like a month ago or something like that. And then like 2 days later, I was like, you know what? This team's actually not that bad. I think I kind of forgot at the time that you had both Tua and Baker Mayfield. Of course, Tua is going through all his stuff right now. But, you are the 10 seed right now. But like I was saying, kind of that 10 and then all the way through the early wild card stages. This early in the season, it's still very much wide open. I mean, 2 or 3 big weeks over the next month and a half could easily swing things. So how are you feeling right now from the bottom? I feel like this was a year where you were going in saying, maybe I can be a little bit of a spoiler, make a little bit of noise, but Malik Neighbors has been an incredible hit for you. and the rest of your team's kind of been picking things up, and you're 2-2. You're just outside of the playoff pictures. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. I mean, like even when I first joined this league, I was kind of targeting 2025 as like the year I expected to compete. So I'm comfortable with where the team's at right now. Obviously, you mentioned Neighbors. He's been a big hit. Like I just need Stephon Diggs to get the fuck out of Houston so Tank Dell can get get some targets again. Um, Laporta, like Laporta, I'm happy with, of course. And then I do think that one of these young backs will hit. We kind of saw like a big breakout game from Chase Brown last week. I'm not thinking that's really sustainable, but I think he's clearly the superior back there to Zach Moss. So I would like to see Chase Brown get more work. I think Tajay and Tony Pollard are pretty much even, so I'd like to see more work for Tajay as well. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just about finding these building blocks, I think. So I feel comfortable saying Neighbors and Laporta and Dell. Like I feel comfortable with all three of those guys. Now I'd like to see at least one of these young backs hit as well. And then just like more consistency from guys like Amari Cooper. It seems like McLaurin's kind of turned it around. Jaden Daniels is starting to throw the ball downfield a little bit more. So McLaurin's turned around these last couple of weeks. So that's been encouraging as well. And then like Andy Dalton, really unexpectedly, has been kind of giving some nice numbers there at the super flex spot.
Yeah, I mean, especially with those running backs, I do think that was kind of like the key for you. And then, you didn't really have that at the beginning of the year. But yeah, it does feel like Tajay, I mean, he definitely had, I think probably his best game of the year last week. And it feels like maybe the Titans are figuring something out because, a lot of people are going to give Mason Rudolph credit. And I'm, also a little biased towards Will Levis here, but a lot of people are going to give, look and say, well, Will Levis threw an interception and then they had a turnover on downs and he came out and got injured. And then Mason Rudolph came in and they scored 30 something points and all that. But I mean, the guy had he threw like 53% of his passes completed them. He had like 80 yards. It was really just getting good field position through defense and special teams. And then, they're kind of running the shit out of the ball. So I do think even going into that week, I felt like we were at some point going to see a more neutered version of Will Levis because overall, like 90% of what he's doing as a quarterback, he's actually playing pretty decent. It's just that the 10% is like maybe some of the worst football ever, where he's not able to just take a sack and he's trying to extend a play and then he's throwing it backwards or he's throwing it up for an interception. But like overall, I don't think he's actually been playing that bad of quarterback. It's just kind of bad optics and inconvenient timing for him to come out. And then it's like, okay, they kind of find a groove with the run game and are able to just methodically work it downfield. They kicked like a million field goals. So, yeah, I do think that that's kind of going to be their bread and butter. I think that, their O-line hasn't been great, but they got Bill Callahan there to teach them. And I think they're going to try and establish things through there. And I think that having a two-headed attack there, both running backs can thrive. So, all right. As always, the show is brought to you by our lovely sponsors at Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at sundog_multimedia. That is Instagram at sundog_multimedia. And now a word from our longtime sponsor at Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it, they will do it. Easy Peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. Should we get into the power rankings now?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let me go back to the share. Yep, share. All right. You guys see it? So how do we want to start? I mean, I'll do one thing for sure. I'm just gonna put McMorrow here. What do we want to call it? Just McMorrow? Just McMorrow tier? I mean, is there really any other way to look at it?
No, not really.
Like we'll just keep
Okay.
because it's just like one of those things to me, like we can come up with some type of name, but it's like for him, he's just out of it this year. And so it's like he's just going to be there all year. I feel like even moving forward, it's like I'll just start the episode with him already there. We don't even have to spend any time on it. George, I mean, we don't always have you on here, so I'd love to hear, get your thoughts on as many teams as possible. When you look at McMorrow's team and you see, I'm reading off the draft order for this year, and you hear he's got 9 of those 12 picks. He's got, 7 of the first 8 or whatever. What's your reaction to that? Because I know that you're a guy that's always been competing. You've had, your beefs with Pete in the past and all that. McMorrow did win the inaugural ring, so he does have that under his belt. But yeah, what do you think when you look at his team and the direction that he's headed in?
Yeah, just embarrassing. I mean, honestly, just a travesty to the league. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of people like we honestly we get a lot of crap, but I just think that the tanking culture, and I've been on this for a long time. When Pete was doing it, the tanking culture is just out of control. You play to win the game. You try to put together a team that can win. I mean, 291 points in 4 weeks is embarrassing. Having 7 picks in one draft is embarrassing. I mean, it's just a lack of work. And I don't think that I think that the problem with that I have, like I generally have with like tanking culture, is that you can always sell a dream. And so like you never, this is what I always said to Pete. Like Pete's never been good. Never, not once. In the 6 years that we've been doing this league, he's never been good. But he came into this year, you would have thought he won a championship with how high he was ranked in the preseason. You know what I mean? So it's like it's one of those things where you can get points for not actually doing anything. Like you didn't actually do the work of winning, but you did the work of like having some cool concepts and cool plans and like a nice couple of trades in the off season. And so yeah, it's embarrassing when you're when your team is like that and you're not competing every week and you're just trying to talk about and like Amaral's team is different, right? Like he came in, the team was terrible, and he had a dispersal. But for McMorrow to just let his team get to a point where he's just going to blow the entire thing up and not try to compete at all from being a champion is embarrassing.
Yeah, and I do wonder with him too, like what's kind of like the breaking point as far as like where, because he's already starting to acquire like 2027 picks, and he made
So
2 trades
yeah, I
where he
mean,
drafted guys in this rookie draft and then he traded them for 2027 picks. So it's like, to me, I was like, okay, he's got all the 2025 picks, he's got a bunch of 26 picks. I just felt like going for that third year was like a step too far. It's like, what are you going to start to do with those? But one thing I will say is like, him having all those picks. I mean, like you look at it, you say, well, he's going to eventually trade some of those. Um, Having like the 7 of the first 8 picks, though, I do think is interesting because, it depends on how you feel about the draft. And I haven't dove too deep into the draft stuff yet this year. But, if you really love like 8 guys, you can kind of just rip off like your top 7 and and just kind of, I mean, that's basically a starting lineup right there. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, you can expect that it's going to take 2 or 3 years for that to become anything. But then you also have all those other future picks. Like he actually has so many picks that I think he can draft and trade them to build like a halfway decent roster. I think the problem with Pete and McMorrow can fall into this issue if he were to, you know, sell off way too much and overpay to get guys. But I just felt like Pete, he didn't consolidate his assets properly. And, he still has a great starting lineup on paper, but we're starting to see it now. Puka Nakua goes down. Bijan Robinson's dealing with a hamstring, or Anthony Richardson, he's hurt. And it's like now you look at the bench and it's like, all right, so he can slot Stafford in. That's like a fine payoff there. He could start DK, but now all of a sudden it's back against the wall. The bench, it's like, who you got? You got like Devin Singletary, and then I don't think he has a current bench receiver that he can play. So all he's got is that 2026 first. Now we're kind of turning this into a Pete thing. We can rank him next if we want to, but Pete, he's only got that 2026 first now, and I don't know how much that can really buy because it's not even 25. So if he's trying to get a player that he can compete with, I think that's going to be tough. But McMorrow, to bring it back to him, he has so many picks, and if he can spend those wisely. And in theory, it's like, okay, if you can also hit on those picks, but that's easier said than done. But if he can spend those wisely, I think that he can actually use those enough, build a good team, still have more left over to draft with, and then do whatever else with. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I got on McMorrow. I feel like I just dumped all my thoughts, and then we could just kind of never really talk about his team again unless he makes a trade or something. Amaral, you got any closing thoughts on McMorrow?
yeah, like I don't mind what he's doing this year. Like he picked a direction. His team was not that good. It was kind of like that fringy contender or whatever we called it last year. So he picked a direction last trade deadline and he sold off. What I hated about the team last year is it had an invalid lineup and he wasn't even starting a quarterback at all. So like that was kind of annoying. But now that Daniel Jones is healthy and he at least has an actual valid starting lineup, I don't mind it so much. I'm curious to see what he does with all these picks. Like I honestly didn't even realize like beyond 2025 what his future picks look like, but that is wild how many picks he has. He got I don't know, four, I think four in 2026 and three in 2027. So he can literally do whatever he wants for the next team that's trying to sell off. He can acquire any, younger players or players that fit whatever his determined timeline is, or he can stockpile with young players and hope to build that way and hope he hits on these young guys in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the whole thing about him having like seven on the first day. It's like I just remember when Pete had all those picks and then he sold some off, and I mean, like part of it was like he got like CeeDee Lamb and things like that. But I know for a fact that there was a point after the draft where all of a sudden he was like, shit, like I could have just held all those and gotten, you know, Stroud and Bijan and Richardson and Gibbs and all that. And then you're like, fuck, like, maybe I should have just held on instead of paying to get those guys. But, it's a tough game. I mean, and yeah, when you get into that, it's like, there's so much more of an unknown where you just don't know if those picks are going to hit. You don't know if these rookies are going to be good. You don't know where those picks are going to fall if you're more than a year out, or even right now. It's like, with him, it doesn't really matter because he has every pick, but it's like in a typical draft, you don't exactly know by week 4 who's going to have what pick. So, all right, let's get on to a different team. Like I said, that's just a whole brain dump. Everybody get it on McMorrow, and then we'll move on to the real teams for the rest of this year. But I don't know. Do we want to try and just go straight up from the top, or do we want to like pick random teams? I mean, George, do you want to make a pick right now? I feel like you could probably pick a team that you want to talk about or anything like that.
I mean, if we're just going to put people and teams that should be locked into a place, then I think we should probably put the standard back in to the standard. I think just given everything that's gone on in the offseason and our ability to just weather the storm and continue to win. I wouldn't call it the standard because I don't think we stand alone. I have some other teams that I think are a little bit better than us. Um, so I'd actually put us one tier below. But yeah, so if I was ranking our team, I'd put us in the that second tier. I'd put us in that second tier.
Amaral, what do you think?
I would also have you in the second tier. I think Wallace has the best team in the league. So I would have Wallace
Yeah, you know
kind
what? I
of.
agree with that. Because I was gonna say,
Yeah, I think it's Wallace.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think that there's an argument depending on how we wanted to go about it. Especially right now, I would kind of put you guys both at the top, but I do agree. And I'll put Wallace up there, and I'll talk about him first, and we can get to George. We already kind of talked about two pins, but um, the thing with Wall, I mean, the guy's taken like hit after hit for the last couple weeks, and he's still putting up like an insane amount of points. I mean, we were talking about Derrick Henry earlier, and I do think that there was. I mean, I was a little bit of a skeptic myself going in, where it seemed like everything was almost too good to be true with Derrick Henry in Baltimore. It's like, okay, the line got created more yards before contact than anybody, and then you start reading, it's like, well, they don't have that whole line coming back. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different. Henry's never had a quarterback that competed with touches with him like that and everything. So I was a little bit skeptical. And then, he comes out and he just rips off like a 90-yard run to start a game, or, he scores 2 touchdowns, no problem. And yeah, it just seems like the Ravens, they are just able to move the ball with ease right now. And they were kind of going into the season saying that they weren't going to lean on Henry like they have been, but they are right now, and they're giving him a bunch of touches. And even with Justice Hill being, a bit of a factor in that backfield that hasn't really mattered. But it's like, I mean, this guy, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they lose Tua and kind of become useless for fantasy right now. And then Isaiah Pacheco, he goes down, and he had to go out and get a new tight end and get Jake Ferguson and do all that. And I mean, this team's still doing it. So I mean, they continue to put up those points, and they're a little bit behind two pins right now, only by a few points. But I could see, Wallace starting to really separate himself from everybody, in this league for the regular season at least. But if he just keeps putting up points like that, it's going to be crazy. So it's like it seems like no matter what, he just hasn't been phased. But Yeah, what else do you guys got on Wallace? I mean, both of you guys were quick to put him at the top.
I mean, I think like Brees Hall is like becoming a legitimate question mark. Like I don't think he's like this clear-cut RB1 right now. Braylon Allen looks like he's getting some of the goal line work. Salah was like talking up Brees Hall's goal line work earlier today or whatever, but Braylon Allen's a better short yardage runner. Braylon Allen's also like they're alternating series at some points too. So I think Brees Hall, there are some legitimate question marks there. Um, then like Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, like those could be two huge losses because if Miami just continues on like this, they shut down Tua for the rest of the year. Those guys are going to be useless. And like I'm experiencing that in redraft. I have Tyreek in 2 leagues and like he's sitting on the bench because I just don't trust whoever they're going to roll out there at quarterback. And then like lastly, I don't feel quite comfortable with Trevor Lawrence. Like that's really a mixed bag. I just honestly don't think he's very good. He's what is he, quarterback 24 or something right now? 21, QB 21. So I think if he's ultimately going to win it and kind of stay on this pace, he's going to need Trevor Lawrence to be better than QB 21.
Yeah, I think that's true. And actually, I mean, now I'm looking at his roster. I'm like, did I really mean everything that I just said? But I do think that right now it's just coming down to those key pillars. And CJ Stroud obviously doesn't have the rushing upside, but it just seems like he's going to get that passing volume every week. Where as long as he's able to get some touchdowns, then he's going to put up good points. But Derrick Henry, Nico Collins just being maybe the greatest receiver of all time now. It just feels like every game he's inevitable. And even if he has like a quiet first quarter, they open up the second quarter with like a 20-yard catch to him and things like that. And then, James Cook and Ken Walker stepping up as well. That's been huge. And, James Cook was a guy I traded to Wallace. I traded him to get Jonathan Brooks. And I mean, personally, like I'm still doing that trade. I love Jonathan Brooks. He hasn't played yet, but, I loved him as a prospect. So I wanted to go out and get him. But my concern with James Cook was the fact that I just never thought he was going to he was never going to be able to, you're never going to be able to rely on him to get touchdowns. And then he comes out and he already has more rushing touchdowns than he had last year, almost, more rushing touchdowns than he had in his career entering the year so far. So, being able to do that. And then Ken Walker, he's always seems to pick up those injuries and miss a couple games every year. But then he comes out and, the Seahawks, they continue to just, run the ball through him and give him a million touches. And of course, last week was a bit of a boom week with the 3 touchdowns and everything. But, he's going to continue to get that work and get that goal line work. And even with Charbonnet maybe working in a little bit, I think Walker's still going to be great. But yeah, I mean, it's like if he's doing this right now with, Tyreek Hill, kind of playing like shit and Trevor Lawrence not really being that great of a quarterback, then, if they are able to turn that around, then that just makes him even more scary. But I do think that there are a little more question marks than I originally thought when we were putting him up on that top tier. But George, you got anything else on Wallace?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of second everything that you guys said. I mean, as of today, the way you set it up, I think this is the best team. But yeah, their outlook looking forward, I think the almost the opposite of like things turning in their direction. I think that we could quickly find that they are not at the top of the league. Nico is inevitable just because he's playing the X in that Shanahan offense. He's pretty much like Brandon Ayuk if Brandon Ayuk was like a high volume player. So he's going to continue to dominate. But I think your point about James Cook is a good one where it seems like the Bills can only play 2 types of game scripts. Like they either play they're ahead by 1 billion points and James Cook is getting all the touches and they're saving Josh Allen, or they're down 2 possessions and it's Josh Allen smash all the buttons and get us back in this game. Like I just feel like the Bills never play like just a regular game script of like 50-50 balance and run with the pass. And so like you are going to be kind of hot and cold with James Cook. And then yeah, Tyreek, you need him. Like if Tyreek can't be Tyreek, I don't see a path to you winning the league. And so yeah, it'll be interesting. But that's probably where he's at right now.
Yeah, and then we started it. We were putting your team up there, and originally I was thinking, and I could almost I could still be talked into it, but I do think it's fair with how Wallace has been playing. Despite some of the injuries that he's had and everything, I still think it's fair to give him that top spot. But we do have your team right underneath that, and I'm looking at your roster right now, and I mean, of course, you're starting guys like Lockett and Roshan Johnson, where it's like it's not exactly the most exciting to play, but Jamar Chase, he is, suddenly turned it on in the last couple of weeks. Jaden Reed is unbelievable when Jordan Love's playing quarterback. Alvin Kamara has been unbelievable. And then I think the real storyline with your team is Jaden Daniels and just being able to get a rookie quarterback like that and have him produce. But I feel like that's kind of what anybody that believed in him expected, right? I mean, he had we knew how good he was as a runner. I thought he was kind of being underrated as a passer coming in. I think people were trying to put question marks on him there just because he's a dual threat guy, and that's the thing you do with dual threat quarterbacks. But of course, he's still making a ton of short throws, but that's the system that he plays in, right? And it's working for him. And maybe the first couple of weeks it was a little quiet on the passing front, but now that he's getting more comfortable, and I mean, even in that Cincinnati game, you could see progression, in his quarterbacking at the NFL level where. Earlier in the game, there was a time where he missed Terry McLaurin deep for a touchdown. He was kind of crossing over, and he just waited to throw it. And I remember the announcer was saying it's like he needs to be able to anticipate that McLaurin's going to get through that and get to that spot and just throw it there and trust that Terry does that. Instead, he wanted to see Terry beat the guy out. And once he did that, that's when he let the throw go. It was too late. They couldn't connect. But then all of a sudden in that, second half, they connect for two of those, crazy catches and that insane touchdown. So, it does seem like they're starting to turn it on. It seems like it's a good system for him. We know that Kyler Murray was, a dual threat. And I don't think to the same degree. I think Daniels is a little more of a runner. But we know that he was able to put up good fantasy stats in that Kingsbury system as well. So it seems like they're having something. I mean, maybe they're in the mix for Devontae Adams as well. That would be something to give him another weapon. But yeah, I mean, I think that your team has been. I still thought they were going to be good, but I think that even to that, there's still a pleasant surprise where it's like, oh shit, they are back at the top. So, congratulations to you. I mean, it is early, but I'll let you run your victory laps. It's all good. I mean, Amaral, you got any opinions on Team Two Pins? Do you still have them up here as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I applaud the aggressiveness. Like you could have just remained complacent with Mahomes and Herbert, and you made the trade to what else did you give up? Herbert and what for number
It
two?
was with me. So it was Herbert. I could
Okay.
just actually no, I can't click. Well, you got Mayor. I know that.
I want
It
to say
was
it's
Herbert for Mayor, Jaden Daniels, and then like two thirds. I don't know what those thirds became.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I mean like you could have just again, you could have just been complacent with the 1.5 championships and said I'm just rolling with these two guys. Uh But I mean, Jaden is Jaden. Like if you're able to run the ball as a quarterback, it's a cheat code in fantasy football. So as long as Jaden stays healthy, I think you're gonna be in good shape. I think ideally you'd probably like even with Cooper Cup, like when he's healthy, I think ideally you'd probably like a second better, yeah, the second flex to be better than Johnson or Lockett, but that's nitpicking at this point. I think the team's pretty complete. Also, I think a pretty wise use of Fab with Kareem Hunt. Like to me, he's locked in as an RB2 the rest of the year in fantasy. Like I don't see anyone threatening his workload in Kansas City. So I mean, yeah, and then I guess another question I might have is Kamara. We were just talking about Henry being older back. Kamara's also 29, a lot of mileage on him. So like if he goes down, that kind of puts you in a difficult position there, a rough spot there with like then you're looking at Kareem Hunt and Roshan Johnson as your top two backs.
totally. And I think we were expecting, honestly, we were expecting more from Ramondre. Like, I knew the Patriots were going to be bad, but I just thought we were just going to run the ball ad nauseum, and I thought that he was going to be a solid back. The offensive line is worse than I could have conceived in my wildest dreams, and he himself has just been playing, obviously, as you guys probably know and watch, just like as bad as a player can play. And then it's funny because we had Antonio Gibson as a handcuff, and then I thought, why do I need a handcuff for Ramondre Stevenson? So then we cut Antonio Gibson, and now we'd like to have him. I actually will say, just to bring another team into this to add them to the rankings, I actually have. If we're doing a 1 through 12 style, I actually do have the older Bowen above my team. Um, they I think still have probably the most complete team in the league, only because I think that they have depth. Like we are like Wallace, not. I mean, I don't even know how we're surviving the injuries that we have right now. But having JMO on the bench and not even playing him, and then knowing like Demont is probably the best type of like vulture like RB2 because you just like kind of know what his work's gonna be. He's like gonna get that first touchdown, gonna get work in the beginning of the game, and then Gibbs is gonna go. So you don't have to like it's not a very like volatile situation. So I actually do have the older Bowens team above ours. But I'd have us three for sure.
I think you guys are like pretty close, and the reason I have you above him is like I assume Ayuk's gonna like knock the rust off here at some point, but he just hasn't been a productive player to this point in the year. So that's why I would have you over Bowen.
I think an argument can be made for both. I mean, I would honestly put you guys in the same tier probably. I mean, I do feel like, and like I said, I didn't want to get too projection-y, but like, I mean, at the same time, it's like, I feel like you have the easier division. Like, there's no guarantee that Bowen's going to win this division. It's still very tight there. And it's like, he's got the race with the whole league, but then I also think he has the toughest divisional race as well. So I do think that's going to be a little tough. But that's something that we can also just let play out. And if he starts to slip in those rankings and he becomes a wild card team, then, in future power rankings, then we can kind of punish him for that. But at this time, right? He's the reigning champ. He came back. He made moves. I do really like how his roster's built. I think his running backs are great. I do think that Monty is like, I don't know if underrated is the word, but he's one of the most underrated like fantasy studs. And the way that Lions offense operates, it's like he's just going to get his touches. And especially something that I really do like about Dan Campbell, at least as a fantasy player, is that if you have one of his guys, those guys, they're gonna get their touches. Like he is like a guy that believes in rewarding his players. Hey, you got us down the field. Let's get you a touchdown or, anything like that. Or, oh yeah, he's been working tough. He just had a good block on the last series. Let's get him some touches. So, I really like that about him and how the Lions operate. And obviously they're always just so innovative with Ben Johnson and everything like that. But yeah, I do think that they do have a little more depth, but maybe I'd put you guys in the same tier. I'd say if we're all kind of in agreement that it's like 50-50, George is kind of saying he gives Bowen the edge. I think with the depth, I give him the edge as well, and it's close enough, right? He's only 20 points behind, which I mean at this point of the season, what the hell is that? So yeah, I mean I'd say let's put them both in that tier, and then we can kind of let it sort itself out. We got any names, Amaral? You got any names for us in these tiers, these top tiers?
Well, yeah, I really like the Suns team. Like my condolences with the Rashid Rice situation. Have like 80% shares in my redraft leagues with Rashid, so that's tough. I will say that it's like also looking a little sort of optimistic that he still hasn't been ruled out for the year with the torn ACL, so I don't really know what the hell's going on there. But like he needs HN to like get going like somehow. Like they need to manufacture yards for these backs. I think in that Miami system with whoever the hell is going to be playing quarterback for them moving forward. But I'm a big Brian Thomas guy. Like I think he's going to produce all year. Mike Thomas? What the fuck? Mike Evans as consistent as it gets. Um, there are real questions about ETN. Like Tank Bigsby just like point blank looks like the better back right now. But he's getting Devontae Smith back from the concussion after this bye week. So I think like that stable, like his core guys, Devontae Smith, Jameer, um, Mike Evans, Brian Thomas, HN, Dak Prescott. Like I really do like that core. Tight end could certainly need he certainly needs some help there. Um, I guess I can't really put them fourth though because the Rasheed situation is like that's a brutal loss. He's producing as a top three, top five guy in the league.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, to me, that kind of almost feels like God giving him what he deserves for that car crash. He
Hey
walked
now,
away unscathed, and now it's like
cool it.
your leg is fucked up now. But
Whoa,
yeah, the
whoa,
reports that
whoa.
I've seen, it's
Chill
like
out. That's crazy.
I mean, the guy fucking like flipped the car over and walked away, and it was like, I got to go to practice the next day. But I mean, the reports I've heard on the knee, it's like basically this could either be a good thing or a bad thing, and there's really no telling right now, because it could just be that there's so much swelling that they can't really see anything right now, so they can't make a judgment. But at the same time, it's like the more time that goes on that they don't rule it to be season ending or a torn ACL or anything, it feels like no news is maybe good news, but we'll see. I mean, it's a brutal hit for him because it could be one of those things where, like, he's done for the season, and then next year he's in prison or something because he's got his trial next summer. But we'll see how it plays out. Did you guys see the video of his mom stealing somebody's mail?
No.
Dove Kleiman tweeted it out. So I mean, like he's a hack. That's like an aggregator, everything like that. But I'm assuming, I mean, it said video from TMZ, so I'm assuming there's some legitimacy here. I haven't looked too much into it. But it's a woman in a Rashee Rice jersey too, which would be crazy if you're committing crimes in your son's jersey. But yeah, she just like walked around somebody's like door, and there was a Ring camera, and she just like stole their mail, and it was like Chapel Roan Records or something like that. I don't know what the hell it was, but yeah, just a bizarre family over there. I don't know what the hell they're doing in the Rice household, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Suns, that's so I mean, George, where would you put the Suns? Because I mean, I do think that there's an argument for them to be fourth.
Fourth and one? No. No. Um, no. I see the like I feel like the Suns is so I guess it kind of depends on like that goes back to the are we projecting or are we talking about like what is reality? Because I think if you're projecting, then you could see the case. But if you look at reality, hey, they're in trouble, brother. I mean, Travis Etienne is like the best, worst running back I've ever seen. Every single time I see him run the ball, I'm like, why are you not like way better than you are? But then like he's not that good. Um, it's kind of like the Trevor Lawrence experience. Like, well, no, Trevor Lawrence is actually just bad. Travis Etienne, like you'll see him pop, like you'll see the speed or something, and then he'll like fumble or he'll just like get stuffed or just like not see a cut, and you're kind of just like, are you okay? Like if you just played like who you are, you'd be so good. Um, I love Rashee. I can't believe that you're throwing dirt on Rashee Rice's name. I loved Rashee Rice. I like.
I could separate the art from the artist. I was just
Yeah,
saying it felt karmic when his own quarterback took out his knee. That's all I'm
fair,
saying. I'm just throwing some theories out there.
fair. But I loved him. I loved him. They were gonna throw him the ball a billion times every single game. He was replacing Kelsey like in his role in the offense.
I was about to say, I do think that Travis Kelce is going to be the biggest benefactor from this. Everyone's trying to find, is Worthy going to step into those roles? Is like Justin Watson or Sky Moore going to see more work or something? But I do think it's just going to be moving Kelsey back to that kind of power slot role and letting him move around a little bit more. But yeah, go on. What were you saying about the Suns?
And then I guess just the last thing is like I think like where I disagree is I think HN it's almost impossible for them to get like when you have a depleted offense when your quarterback goes out, you can only get so many guys like back up to their status. And I think in order to get Tyreek and Waddle and specifically Tyreek back to like making plays, they're gonna have to find ways to get them the ball closer to the line of scrimmage. Like he cannot keep bombing it. And that's gonna affect like I think that they're just gonna like put Tyreek Hill in the backfield and hand him off the ball or run those like extension of the run play bubble screens or whatever the case may be. So it's like I think that some of that HN work is going to go to like, how do we get the ball into Tyreek Hill's hands more? We're going to have to put him in positions that would have been HN in the past. And so I think there's just not enough. There's not enough food right now for Tyreek to even eat, let alone to get like somebody like HN or any of the backs involved. So I just think he's going to kind of float in the like interstellar ether as a team. I just don't see how he's going to climb out of that hole.
Yeah, and I'm already seeing it now, right? And that's my whole thing going into this year was like, when I was building my team was I wanted to get more depth because I just see how teams get fucked on the bye weeks, and we're already seeing it with him where Goff is out, Gibbs is out, I think Devontae Smith, I think the Eagles, whether he's going to be healthy or not, I'm pretty sure they have a bye week this week.
They do have a bye, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like he's sitting those guys, and now all of a sudden he's got uh Yosivas in this flex. He's got Keenan Allen in the super flex, it looks like, because he doesn't have a third quarterback. And he still doesn't have a tight end with a starting job. Like he's playing Isaiah Likely. And, I think Likely's, I mean, going into this week, he was like PFF's #1 tight end. And he was like still like in the top 5. And it was completely because of that week 1. And imagine if he got that toe inside on that last touchdown too, that would be carrying him even more. But he's got like 2 yards since week 1. He hasn't done anything, and he's still ranked high. And I mean, I think the tight end position in general is kind of in shambles right now. So it's kind of a toss up for anybody's tight end. But yeah, it's like I do think that there are enough question marks to warrant not putting them. Like George said, I can see the vision for it, and I was seeing the argument, especially I'm looking at it. I think that they have the 5th most points right now. They're only 2 behind Pete though. So they are playing well, but yeah, I do feel like 4 is us kind of boosting them up and only looking at their ceiling and not paying attention to the floor, which I think the floor might be more realistic. I agree with the A-Chain stuff. I think that he's going to have to rely on being like a 7 reception a game guy now. I don't think that he's going to be doing it on the ground. I think that teams are not even going to have to necessarily stack the box, but if they want to, they can say, Tyler Huntley, try and throw against us. We dare you. And, they can be cool with Tyreek Hill getting 60 yards a game or something and, maybe slipping away for 1 touchdown. But I think that offense is just in such a bad spot. And, to continue to just kind of push that Tua agenda. I don't think that he's like the best quarterback ever, but he's clearly a straw that stirs the drink in that offense. And without him, they always seem to go to shit. And, part of it can be the level of the backup quarterback that they have. But yeah, right now it's tough to see anything going. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, who do you think that we should rank 4th then, George?
Oh yeah. I know you don't like this team, but I like Pete. I like Pete.
I think there are real question marks with him. Like also, I mean, this is like a super projection and projecting a trade, but it feels like almost inevitable at this point that Devontae Adams is going to be the Jets' #1 receiver and like completely tank
Yeah, I
Garrett
saw
Wilson.
that a lot of teams are starting to think that it feels like he's just constructing a trade to get him to the
Yeah,
Jets.
he's going to the Jets. I
Yeah.
mean, him and Rogers have probably already talked about it.
And then like honestly, like Rodgers with those guys he trusts, like he's still including Lazard in the offense right now. So I think I have real questions about Garrett Wilson for this year anyway.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't. I'm not a Garrett guy. I'm a CD guy. I love CD.
Same.
But I think it's either Pete or it's the only thing I hate about Big Brain is that I don't know if you're going to be able to continue to roll out Deshaun Watson week in week out. That guy is terrible. He cannot play football. He's awful. But the rest of his team is pretty solid. James Conner's, you want to talk about underrated running backs. James Conner's got to be one of the most underrated fantasy assets. Like he is like pretty good. Like he's pretty solid. He's always just getting yards. Um, Shakir, when the Bills have positive game scripts, Josh loves him. And I think Jordan Love, when he comes back, I mean, they're going to throw the ball. So the only thing I hate about Big Brain's team is like I literally don't know if you can start Deshaun week in, week out. But I would have one of those two probably up next.
But what do you think of I mean, I would throw the Vibers in the mix there, to be honest. If we're comparing all these teams together, I kind of feel like the Vibers could make an argument for themselves. I mean, the quarterback plays a little weak, and I mean, you could say the same thing about Big Brain. Obviously, they have Jordan Love, who seems to be, almost like that CJ Stroud level where he's just going to get that passing volume, and as long as he can get 2 touchdowns at least, he's probably going to have a decent enough game. But I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at Igor's team right now, and I mean, they haven't had AJ Brown for the last 2 weeks, right? But they're
Correct.
still, they're still top 6 in scoring. They're right there. AJ Brown is coming back. I mean, Aaron Jones, he's been getting great use in that Vikings backfield. Jordan Mason has stepped right into Christian McCaffrey's carries. And Cortland Sutton, I don't think he's going to be too reliable with Bo Nix throwing the ball, but it seems like Deontay Johnson has really found something with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Marvin Harrison is great. Trey McBride missed last week, but he's another great option at tight end. And, like I said, the quarterbacks, it's a little questionable, but he does have his options. I mean, Purdy, I think, was just a must start every week. And then, he's going to have his down weeks. And we see it in systems like that where sometimes you maybe go more run heavy and it doesn't work out. But it's like between Kirk, Derek Carr, and Aaron Rodgers, I think that at least one of them is going to figure it out and become, a little bit better than they've been. I think that those have all kind of been, weak QB2s for the start of the season. But I mean, it might just come down to, he has to play the right one, and, playing that guessing game can be brutal. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Vibers, as much shit as I've kind of been talking about them, I do feel like they are in this conversation as well. I don't know where you guys stand on them.
So I completely missed AJ Brown on the Vibers roster when I was going through them. So I think I honestly I've kind of talked myself in while you were just talking there, I've kind of talked myself into Big Brain and Vibers. Probably Vibers, then Big Brain in that order, ahead of Pete and then the Suns as like those next four teams. Um, like honestly, I like in another dynasty league, I won a championship last year, like starting one quarterback in a super flex league. So it is possible. Like Love could carry the way and he could just like figure it out, especially when Devontae Adams is traded. Like I would rather play Devontae Adams than play Deshaun Watson, or even like J.K. Dobbins in a plus matchup is there's a decent chance he's going to outscore Deshaun Watson. So I think I think Big Brain does have some nice pieces. They just gotta really hope that Devontae lands in a nice I don't know, like a positive environment, I guess.
Yeah, and they do have, I was talking about Pete only having that 26 first. They do have a 25 first. So it's like, I think that that's going to, and they got a couple 25 seconds. They actually have 3 25 seconds. And, they would still have to do something with that. We don't know what that can turn into, but they actually have a pretty decent treasure chest as far as, what they can use to try and improve this team. And, they do have some holes. I mean, personally, like I don't think like DeAndre Swift is a guy, despite having that massive week last week. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be doing that every single week. I just don't think that that's how the offense is going to run. J.K. Dobbins, I think they did a great start. I feel like that's not going to be too sustainable as well. But again, that's just how I feel about it. Well, we'll have to see. But yeah, I do think that they have a strong enough roster where it's like those holes can be patched up. And, we're getting into the middle of the board now where like nobody's going to be perfect here. So we kind of have to look at those little things there as well. But with where they're at right now and then what they actually have the capability to do if they choose to do that, I would definitely put Big Brain pretty high. And then, yeah, I agree. I almost see Vibers and Big Brain in like a tier together. And then, we go to the next one. I don't know how you feel about that, George.
I actually like what I have. I like big brain Vibers in some order. Vibers, big brain. I don't really care. And then I'll put Athletic Suns in that tier at the end of it.
Yeah, they'll be the third team. All
Yeah.
right. All right. What do we think? We'll go Big Brain. We'll go Vibers, and then we'll go Suns right there. And yeah, I think we touched on all three of those teams. I think that sums it up pretty well.
I think
Uh
Pete might be in that tier too. Like it's kind of a big tier, but I think
yeah,
Pete,
No,
I can agree with that.
You talked me out of Pete. You talked me out of Pete. I started looking at Pete's team, and I'm not gonna lie to you.
he
It's
has
like
no depth.
it's one of those teams where like you look at the names at first, and
Yeah,
you're
and that's kind
and
of,
you
that's
see
kind of
the
what I was
team.
saying at the beginning. I don't know if I said that pre-show or when we started recording, but it's like I was saying, Mahomes, obviously they're still winning their games and he's still able to lead the team to wins, but statistically, he's not playing his best. I mean, he's throwing a bunch of picks and, they're not scoring at the same rate and it hasn't been great. But if you were talking like, oh, who are like the best quarterbacks this year, people are still putting Mahomes in the top five because he's Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like Pete can kind of get that treatment as well, where it's like, well, going in, we were looking at his team on paper and holy shit, he's got Hurts and he's got Richardson, then he's got Robinson and Taylor and he's got Lamb and Wilson and holy shit, he's got Mark Andrews at tight end, he's got DK, he's got Kyron, he's got, all those guys, he's got Puka Nakua. And I mean, I think that's pretty much every relevant player on his team besides Stafford and Singletary. But yeah, it's like, Garrett Wilson, I mean, there needs to be a serious conversation about him. And, he has gotten by on the bad quarterback thing as well. And, I mean, again, I'm making a biased argument for one of my guys here, but when you look at like the per target and the per catch stats. And, when you break down the efficiency, London and Wilson were like the same, but Wilson got way more volume than Drake ever got. So when you're looking at the counting stats, of course he has more yards. Of course he's scoring more touchdowns. Of course he's catching more balls. That's because he's getting way more targets. But I feel like Garrett Wilson is still way overvalued. I think if you look at keep trade cut, he's still like wide receiver 10 or something like that. And I just don't think he's been that. I don't think he's earned that. And when you're a rookie and you're not quite playing up to it, it's like, well, we still know what you have, and you're a rookie, you're going to figure it out. But we're in what, year 3 now, and we've never actually seen him do that. And I think I saw a stat today. He's like the one wide receiver drafted in the top 20 ADP that hasn't had like a 15 point per game PPR week or something like that. So, he hasn't done it. And he has Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, and Alan Lazard's catching the ball just fine. And, Mike Williams, he's coming back from injury and he's catching the ball just fine. So, I don't know. I mean, he's still getting his targets and he's just not getting those yards. So I don't know what the deal is there. But I do think the big storyline here, too, is that he's got Mark Andrews starting in that tight end spot. And Mark Andrews, it just seems like fantasy wise, he's dead. And personally, like, I'm a little more optimistic. I don't think that this is going to be the story all year. Maybe it's going to kind of be, every so often he puts up a big game. And for the most part, he's putting up like 3 or 4 points. But I don't feel like he's totally washed. I think people are overlooking the fact that like 2 weeks before the season, he got in a pretty bad car accident. Every highlight that they kept showing, he was like blocking his ass off. So if he's still going out there and hitting those blocks and helping control that run game and set the tone there, I feel like he's still got something in the tank. He's only 29. It's not like we're talking about a 32-year-old player or something like that. I just feel like he got off to a slow start. He had the car accident. So I don't think he's going to be this bad all year. But at the same time, it just feels like tight ends might be having a down year in general. But yeah, it's like when you're looking at Pete's team, and it's kind of the same thing. You're looking on paper. It's like Anthony Richardson kind of looks like he sucks. And Jalen Hurts, he's
He
still able
sucks.
to put up the good fantasy points, but at the same time, it feels like
Thanks.
he's starting to regress as an NFL quarterback right now. And I mean, I think that he's safe in his job, but it's like, I mean, you'd like to see him not regress as a passer. I feel like it would be better to not do that. So it's like, I just feel like it's now that we're here and we're seeing his team, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a good team, but it's not the dominant, top 3 team or anything like that. And now that the injuries are starting to kick in, you're looking at that bench, and the bench is brutal. He literally doesn't have a bench receiver right now. If any of his receivers get hurt, he would have to pick somebody up on the waiver wire. And at this point, that wire is pretty thin. So, yeah, I mean, I do think, I don't know, is Pete in this tier with those 3 teams, or is he a tier below?
I, I'm kind of like also talking myself out of this the more we go through it. Like Jonathan Taylor has this high ankle sprain or the mild high ankle sprain, whatever the hell they're calling it. Um,
Yep. So
Bijan,
that's
like
Singletary in the lineup now, and then that leaves him with, if anybody again were to get hurt, he would have to start Dalvin Cook or Algier, or if a receiver got hurt, I mean, he just wouldn't have one. He'd have to start one of them in the flex. So yeah, it's like when you look at it like that, and I don't even think that's too much of a projection. That's where he's at right now. If anybody on his team gets hurt, he's in some serious trouble, and already he's the 4 seed. He's a wild card team, but he's not running away with it like a lot of people thought, and there's just not a lot of wiggle room for him to get out of this. And I'm not seeing a ton of room for improvement. So do you
I
guys
mean,
think the tier below?
you played him head to head this week at pretty much full strength of his team
I whooped him.
and destroyed him.
I
And
was he
Amaral, you would
pinned
have
on the
played him
headboard.
too.
I
So
was
it's like,
fucking him up.
yeah. So it's like I can't put him in that. I can't put him there. I can't put him
Yeah.
there.
But yeah, I do think he's
another
the next team up, but I think he has to be out of this tier.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think another thing about like Pete's team is like Bijan has like the draft capital and stuff, and like he's unquestionably like a better football player than Algier, but is he like a better runner than Algier? Because like Algier was fucking ripping off chunk runs like crazy last week, and
I,
Bijan's
I was
kind
I
of
was doing the stats last night,
plodding
and I'm
around.
pretty sure it's like basically 50-50 on touches inside the 20 and inside the 10. So I mean, like they like him there. I mean, that's the thing. It's like this is a football team. They have a good running back. They're not going to just bench him because they have Bijan Robinson. It's like they have a guy that can go out there and get the tough yards, and he's doing it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, he's another guy where it's like you look at that team, you're like, holy shit, look at this list of names. But then you're looking at the stats, you're like, I don't know how great they really are. So all right, we got Pete there. Okay, is there anybody else in this tier, or are we continuing to move down?
Well, so this is where it gets interesting, right? Because do you think and this is a question for the two of you, because I would say your two teams are probably up next, right? Do you think that Pete's team is a tier ahead of you?
Right now, that's tough for me to say because we just said I fucked them up last week, and that was basically two teams head to head. I mean, I can't even. I mean, well, no, that's not true. Okay, he's got a guy out. I was gonna say I have Mixon out. He does have Puka Nakua out, so I'll give him that. But yeah, I mean, you can just call that even strength. Two teams pretty much at their best, and I beat them pretty good. And I mean, that was definitely a positive regression week for my team. Where I mean, part of it, and if I'll speak on my team now, is like I've kind of coached myself out of being one of the. I mean, points four wise, I wouldn't be that high, but I mean, I could have been, I think 4-0. I think my first 3 weeks I lost by like a combined like 10 points or something. And it all came down to literally me just making bad managerial decisions last second. Week one, I go get my haircut right before the game. I'm sitting there the whole time getting my haircut thinking, shit, Levis and Caleb Williams are about to have an absolute track meet. I was going to start Sam Darnold. I wanted to start him. He's back at MetLife, all that. I get out of the barber chair. It's like 12:45. Pull that phone up. I put Will Levis in. That loses me the matchup. That was it. That
You
right
can't
there.
tinker. You can't tinker. You just gotta set it and forget it.
So I have my sheet and I've been doing it by my stats and going into the season I'm like I'm just going to stick to my sheet. I'm going to stick to my projections of my stats and I'm just going to go for it and then I'm sitting there and I'm like I got to do it. And then I'm playing Simcoe in week 3 and I right before it was like 3:45 I'm sitting there and I had Chuba Hubbard starting in my lineup. And then I go, I need a spark. I'm kind of falling behind Simcoe here. I need a spark. I got to put JSN in. He just had like a 12 target week. I got to start him. I need receptions to kind of get my team going. Hubbard, second drive of the game, I think he had a receiving touchdown. JSN had like 3 targets. Hubbard puts up like 20 something points. That was the difference right there. It's like all of my first few games, I just like completely coached myself out of it. That's on me. I mean, I took the last couple of years off. I was kind of doing my rebuilding on the fly thing and trying to put a team together. I haven't been in a position like this. I think I kind of just crumbled under the pressure. I learned, but that's a hand up. That's an accountability thing. It's my fault. My team should be like 3-1, 4-0 right now. I coached myself out of it. So, I mean, I do want to give my team a little bit of love because of that, though. I mean, we saw the points for when you look at it that way. I go from being what the 4th or the 5th draft pick to moving up to being the 6th or whatever. So, I do think that my team is better than how it's played. It's completely on me, but at the same time, I lost my first 3 games and put myself behind the 8 ball. Lost 3 straight games to my division opponents. Now I got to sweep them on the way back at the end of the season. So, I do have to suffer for that. But yeah, I don't know if I would put Pete's team, I would put his ahead of mine just because of the upside that a lot of his players do have. But I just feel like, my team's pretty good. I think that we got off to a slow start. And, I have the depth to, like I said, I don't want to lose these bye weeks. I have the depth to continue to compete in these bye weeks. I got my quarterbacks. I got a plenty of running backs. I got plenty of receivers. I got Ingram. I got Kittle at tight end. So, I mean, we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm like right behind Pete. And then, yeah, I think Amaral's next up. But then I also think, I mean, George, you didn't include Go Tigers. Do you not think that they're in that conversation as well?
No, no, no. I have no respect for Little Bowen's management. No, no, God, no. Little Bowen's gonna be in a tier of his own. He's right above McMorrow. Bless his heart because he competes. He's what I actually want McMorrow to be. I I love Lil Bone, but he's what I want Bowen to be. Like I mean, sorry, not Bowen, McMorrow. Like he competes, and I respect that. And he's in the league and he's doing his thing. He's always gonna be terrible, but like works hard. Lunch pail guy. I think he was in the playoffs one year, so he's a lunch pail guy. He's always gonna put his team there. But no,
I actually think you beat him
yeah, I did beat
in
him.
the
I did beat,
championship.
but I
Yeah.
like him a lot. But I like him a lot though. I like him a lot. He's a good guy. He's got a big heart, and so no, his team. Uh, no, but yeah. So I would definitely have him in. Like I think he's a tier above McMorrow, and then it's however you guys want to sort out Pete, and then your 2 teams. That's how I
So,
see it.
Amaral, what do you think? Because I think that our two teams are pretty close right now. So it's like it depends on do we want to go together with Pete or do we want to have our own tier? I think it's a good argument for both sides.
Uh, I mean, I still like Pete's like top end talent like a lot more than mine. Like I honestly realistically probably think I'm like in the tier with Go Tigers at this point. Like we kind of both have like these two fucking alphas from LSU. Like he has Jefferson, I have Neighbors, and then it's like a bunch of question marks after that. Um,
But let me ask you this though.
yeah.
It's because just staying in like the present. If you're playing Pete next week, you think you could beat him. Like you're looking at his team and you're like, I can beat this guy.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like my team and like also I'm playing catch up a bit. Like I had fucking pitiful weeks the first 2 weeks of the season. I scored 85 and then 70 against the Vipers.
Yeah, and I
So
think I think that's part of it where it's like I think both of our teams have just been kind of underperforming for one reason or another. I mean, I was talking about my managerial stuff, but at the same time, right? DJ Moore hasn't really done much. Michael Pittman finally had a good game last week, but those are two guys that I thought were going to be like weekly locks to be in my starting lineup, and they haven't really given me shit. So it's like, I mean, you're kind of having the same thing where Amari Cooper hasn't done much. Terry McLaurin's starting to catch on. Sam Laporta maybe had, his week to kind of light him up. So I do think that you know, I think that the three of our teams, me, you, and Pete, are all pretty close when we're looking at these rankings. I think that maybe, the gap between you and Pete is where it can maybe get a little fuzzy, and I'm somewhere in the middle there. I don't know which side of the scale I'm on there, but yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe we are kind of the same tier and we just rank them in that order.
that's fair. I think that makes some sense.
So I'll
Like
do that. So
like I think we like my team was pretty much performing or close to a sailing, I would say, like last week 3, George, when I scored 128 on you. Um, like that is what I would like to see. I need like consistency like that out of Cooper and McLaurin. Um, but yeah, these last 2 weeks have been like night and day compared to the first 2 weeks.
How sick were you when Cooper broke that long score and they called it back because of
Oh my God. Yeah.
I was I was watching on Red Zone and I see Cooper just going crazy and I'm like, damn, what's going on? And I just see the flag come out. I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah, that was tough. Also last week it was pretty fucking tough watching them call the hold on George Kittle. Not in this league, but I have Jordan Mason in like 4 leagues and fucking Kittle, the perfect block downfield, and they call that hold and take away Mason's touchdown.
Mason's had two of those now. I mean, he should have
Yeah,
had two touchdowns in week one, but Debo held on an easy walk-in touchdown, and then Debo ran it in himself like 2 plays later,
yeah.
which was just so dirty. Because that was actually week one. I was playing Big Brain. Debo needed like 16 points. He did that shit. I lost by half a point, and it's like those are the little things where I'm like, holy shit. Because that's when they lost CMC and they had nobody to sub in. I was like, this is like unbelievable. I had no chance to win this. All of a sudden, I might be like falling ass backwards into a win, and then Debo has like a 25-yard catch to put the game away, and then they pull him, and that was enough to get him over the edge. If it was a 25-yard run, I would have tied him, I think. But yeah, I think the three of our teams, I think that we kind of all belong together, and then it's you can kind of rank them however you want in that tier, and if you think that Amaral's way behind Pete, then that's fair. But at the same time, I feel like this is kind of the lower threshold for the playoff teams. I don't know if we're talking about Go Tigers. I don't really take them too seriously as a playoff contender. And then Simcoe's teams left on the board as well, where kind of the same thing there. So I do feel like at the same time we do have to put ourselves all together because I think that that's going to be the playoff picture for the year. But all right, we got two more teams left. How do we want to sort these out? So you were talking, George. You were saying you had Mikey one tier above McMorrow. Is Simcoe in that tier, or is he in his tier above him?
Actually, just pulled Simcoe's team is laughably bad. I actually don't know how this team is 2-2. That's incredible. This team is awful. It's funny. I was talking to Simcoe because he like I don't know what happened to him this offseason. If he just got a little like I don't know what happened, but he just started blowing up his team and just like doing random stuff. Um, and it's kind of cost him. And I honestly I'm so confused how he went from like the team that he had last year that I was like, this team is unbelievable to what he has right now. But yeah, his team's awful. Like he's worse. He's McMorrow has his own tier, so he can't be in McMorrow's tier, but he is like firmly the second worst team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he doesn't have the picks that McMorrow has or anything, but he does have players, and he's got some good players on that team. But the thing is, I mean, he's got his quarterbacks, he's got some decent receivers. Um, I'm, I got to pull it up and see it for myself, but I'm pretty sure those running backs are pretty damn bad. And
Cam
he's got like
Akers and Braylon Allen.
yeah, so it's like okay, Allen could actually be something, and then we'll see how that kind of shakes out in that Jets backfield. But yeah, it's like you got Jalen Wright, who's behind some of the two of the better running back tandems in the league. You got Braylon Allen, who's going to be competing with Breece Hall. But yeah, it's like okay, Roma Dunze, Leggett, those are guys that need to kind of come into their own. Chris Olave and Brock Bowers, I think, are both very good. But yeah, it's like Lamar's obviously nasty, and he's got Herbert. But the thing is, even when Herbert's not dealing with the foot injury, it's just murky right now. I mean, I just don't think that QJ and Lad McConkey are going to be able to get it done. They're still going to need to add another piece at some point and continue to build out that offense for him. But right now they're going run heavy. And even when Herbert's healthy and he's playing, he's not really a great redraft quarterback. I mean, I know in my home league, my redraft league, he just got dropped. And I think that that's totally fair. He's just not putting up those points. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of growth that needs to come from Simcoe's team. And at the same time, it's like, I don't really know where he's filling out the rest of this roster. He's got a 26th third, and then he's got all 27 picks. And, that's it. So I think he's going to have to get crafty. I mean, I know that he's kind of flirted with the idea of trading one of those quarterbacks. And I mean, I think Lamar is just going to get significantly more of a return than Justin Herbert is. But I also don't really love that either. So it's like he's going to have to make some tough decisions if he wants to try and fill out this roster. So, I mean, right now, yeah, I don't really view him as much of a competitor. I mean, he did beat me, but whatever. Pulled Chuba Hubbard like 10 minutes before he started his 25-point game or whatever. But yeah, I think this is going to be a team that struggles. And yeah, I mean, I understand your disdain for Mike Bowen, but yeah, it sounds like you just kind of forgot about his team. I was a little shocked to have you. I was like, oh wow, he thinks really highly of Simcoe's team. But yeah, so how do we want? I mean, I do think that Mikey is in his own tier above Simcoe. I think that. Let's see. How do I add one?
Is it Mikey or Winsper? What are we rocking with here?
When it's good, it's Winsper. When it's bad, it's Mikey. So
Gotcha.
right now we're
Gotcha.
dragging him. That's Mike Bowen's team all the way. So yeah, I mean, I think it's Mike here, and then the shits here. Is that how we're feeling?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, we need new names for. Okay, so how do we want? Do we want to like name these tiers or anything like that? I mean, do we have any ideas or what? Should we just go D? Is Mikey just D tier?
Oh no, we could are we like naming them from the top? Because we could
Yeah, I
like
don't know. Like, I don't know if we got like anything creative for these, or if we're just gonna go basic like ABC or anything like that. But I mean, like what is Wallace the standard, or is that always just gonna be the top thing? I mean, I don't really think he's a standard, but I mean, what do we think? I mean, do we got anything or
I
no?
think it's like Wallace is like
I think
Wallace is
Wallace is
that
the
for now.
favorite. I think like Wallace is the favorite, but George and Bowen are the standard, like the past champions. So you're talking about the Chiefs.
I actually like that, having him on top as the favorite, but then having the standard right behind. I mean, because that's kind of like like the Pats. Like they might not be the hot team that year, but they're still going to win 11, 12 games. They're still going to be like the 1 or the 2 seed, and they're going to be in the AFC championship. So I kind of like having Wallace as the favorite right now. And then this is the standard. I mean, these are, when you think of champions in this league, I think at this point, that's what you're thinking of. You're thinking of like the first respected champion in 2 pins. And then you got Bowen, who's, maybe becoming a bit of an institution. He has a finals appearance. He has a ring himself. And then, going into this year, he's probably have one of the more attractive rosters as well. So, yeah, I think that the favorite and then the standard. So what do we think this next tier is? Like, are they like contenders or something? I don't really know like what the or we could go to the bottom. I mean, where's Simcoe at? George, do you think Simcoe's in hell? We always have a hell tier mixed in. Or do you think Mike Bowen's in hell?
Bowen's in hell for
Or is
sure.
Mike
Bowen,
Bowen in purgatory?
Bowen's in hell.
Is he in hell or is he in purgatory? Because I do feel like he's just kind of just going to be floating there at like that like 8 spot,
Yeah, I think it might be purgatory. I think you're right.
Yeah, okay. Put him in purgatory.
and then
Put Simcoe in hell.
yeah, Simcoe is hell. Okay. And then I mean I feel like these two tiers are almost the same. It's
I
just
want to
that
do like a good bad teams, bad good teams, like type of simile for these two, if we can.
I'm also like feeling now that like looking at this, coming up with names, like I think like Kieran, your team and my team should maybe be moved out of the tier with Pete. Like he's like the underachiever tier, and we're kind of like the scrappy tier. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
actually kind of like that. I think if we put ourselves right below him, I actually like that because Pete is yeah. And I think that does need to be denoted. I like that. Let's do that. That's ugly. We okay. That's not gonna work. We're gonna. I am not doing this with the ER at the bottom like that. That is hideous. We'll figure something else
Yeah,
out.
you never want to have the hard ER. That's what they tell me.
What do you think? Like the scrappy underdogs or something? So I don't know. Like the because we're just fighting. We're scratching and clawing. Or no, we'll just say scrappy. We're just a scrappy tier.
scrappy, nice and easy. Can they?
Uh,
Uh,
I don't know. Maybe I'll have to tinker around with it. Pete is the underachiever tier. I might just have to tinker around with
who's like a classic underachiever, like a football team or a player, just like a
He's a
classic
70. Is he the Sixers?
the
yes,
Sixers,
yes, the Joel Embiid tier.
the process
Yeah,
team.
Joe and Bill.
Or yeah,
Joe.
or should he just be the process? Because I mean that has kind of been his whole thing. Trust,
That I think that checks out. I think that's a good
trust the
call. Fix it.
process.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be. Okay, and then what is this B tier? Right? I mean, to me, it's kind of B for boring. I mean, these are just 3 teams where it's like I guess they're good. I'm not really getting too excited about any of them, but I don't know. Like I guess they're just like good.
Can we put an emoji in here? Do you have emojis? What do you want?
I could like Photoshop one in.
Because I just put the yawn.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do this. Or yeah, I'll do. How about this? That's what we'll do. And then maybe I'll Photoshop in the tier. Um, any other edits? I mean, I feel like this is a pretty accurate analysis of the current state of the league.
I think that's good. Yeah, I like it.
All right. Well, we'll call it at that. I mean, actually ran pretty long, but I think that was a pretty good discussion. I mean, we talked about some things. I think George, he felt some type of way about me. It's always been love with George between from my end, but it's good to see your face, George. It's good to have you back. Always love having you on the show. I wish you never abandoned me like you did back in the day. But Amaral, always a pleasure. We love to have you back as well. I hope to mix and match you guys with other people in the league at some point this season. And Amaral, I'm sure we'll be talking about some other, draft stuff or anything else that we want to work on. But that is it. That is the week 4 checkup. Maybe we'll call it the week 4 report card. I'll try and put together some sort of thumbnail for the 3 of us. But that's how it stands. So we got Wallace at the top as the favorite. We got McMorrow in the bottom. Somehow he's below Simcoe and Hell. We will see you in 2 weeks.